And another Daily Mail TV exclusive, too posh to push. Meghan Markle made her first husband agree to a pregnancy contract to make sure that she was afforded every possible luxury if she gave birth to their child. Charlie Langston has the exclusive details now from our New York newsroom. Charlie, what did this so-called pregnancy contract reveal?
The man who stayed silent for more than a decade has finally stepped forward, and the ripple effects from that single move are now shaking the very foundation of one of the most carefully controlled public images in modern pop culture history. This is not just another recycled headline floating around gossip circles. This feels like something much heavier, much deeper, and way more explosive than people expected. We are not talking about a bitter ex trying to stay relevant, and we are definitely not dealing with random tabloid noise or anonymous internet speculation trying to stir drama for clicks. We are talking about Trevor Engelson, a Hollywood producer who was once married to Meghan Markle, long before she became a duchess, long before Netflix deals, long before global interviews, and long before the world knew her name in the way it does today. He knew her during the early grind, back when she was still pushing through the brutal entertainment industry, building her career step by step, chasing opportunities in a world that rarely hands them out easily. According to the narrative being discussed, he wasn't just a bystander in that chapter of her life. He was someone deeply involved in it, someone who helped shape those early years behind the scenes. The man she reportedly left with nothing more than a FedEx envelope containing her wedding and engagement rings, no face-to-face conversation, no drawn-out closure, just a sudden and cold ending that people still talk about to this day. And now, in 2026, sources claim he is finally done staying quiet, and that alone has sent shockwaves across conversations online and in entertainment circles. Think about that for a second. Over 10 years of silence, a full decade of watching everything unfold from the sidelines, while the story around him kept getting rewritten, reshaped, and polished into something almost unrecognizable to those who knew the earlier version. Over 10 years of silence while his own presence in that story slowly faded from public mention, while documentaries, interviews, and narratives continued to evolve without his voice included at all. What kind of weight builds up in someone after that long? What kind of pressure finally pushes a person from complete silence into speaking out after more than a decade of restraint and distance from the spotlight? That is exactly what people are now trying to unpack, because the Trevor Engelson situation is being framed not just as a personal story, but as something much bigger tied to narrative control, memory, and who gets to define the past. And according to sources close to the discussion, Prince Harry is reportedly stunned by how quickly this shift is happening, reacting with shock behind the scenes as this development unfolds. The man who allegedly knew too much is now stepping back into the conversation, and insiders are treating this as more than just celebrity commentary. It's being described as a moment that could reshape how parts of the past are viewed. To understand why this sudden silence-breaking moment is being called seismic, you have to understand who Trevor Engelson is being presented as in this story. He is not being framed as a random ex trying to chase attention or money, but as someone with an established Hollywood career, a stable personal life, and long-standing industry relationships built over years of work and consistency. According to the narrative being discussed, he has a new wife, children, and a production career that has continued independently of past relationships or media cycles. That stability is exactly what makes his long silence even more striking, because he reportedly had every reason to stay out of public drama completely, to keep building his life without revisiting old chapters at all. For years, while Meghan Markle's public profile expanded dramatically, royal events, global interviews, high-profile deals, streaming projects, memoir discussions, Trevor remained completely out of the conversation. No interviews, no public statements, no indirect commentary through media leaks or third-party narratives, nothing at all. And in today's world, where almost everyone close to fame eventually shares their version of events, that silence stood out even more, almost creating its own kind of mystery. People began to interpret that silence in different ways. some seeing it as dignity, others seeing it as restraint, and others even suggesting it meant there was more to the story than had ever been spoken publicly. But now, the question being raised is simple but intense. Why break that silence now, after so many years of holding it in? According to insiders referenced in these discussions, the motivation isn't being tied to money or publicity, but to something described as frustration over perceived erasure of personal history. The claim suggests that over time, parts of his involvement in earlier chapters of that story were gradually minimized or left out of public retellings, and that this slow fading became harder to ignore as narratives became more polished and widely repeated. Sources allege that what once was tolerable silence eventually became something heavier, as if watching a personal history being reshaped without input or acknowledgement. And that emotional buildup is now being framed as the breaking point that led to this shift in 2026. The FedEx divorce moment in 2013 is being brought back into focus as the starting point of everything that followed, and it is being described in very dramatic terms across these narratives. At the time, Trevor was reportedly in Los Angeles while Meghan was in Toronto working on Suits, a series that was rapidly changing her career trajectory and expanding her visibility in the entertainment world. They had been married for a couple of years, and according to accounts being referenced, he was heavily involved in supporting her early career path, using connections, guidance, and emotional support during her rise in the industry. But then came the moment that would define how this chapter is remembered in these retellings. A package reportedly arrived by mail containing her wedding and engagement rings, with no in-person conversation attached to it. No long discussion, no final meeting, just the end of a marriage delivered in physical form. That detail alone has been repeatedly highlighted because of how emotionally stark it appears when described this way. And from that moment, the narrative of separation became part of a much larger discussion about relationships, accountability, and how endings are handled when emotions and public perception collide. What followed in the years after is being described as a shift in social circles, career environments, and personal networks. As Suits gained momentum, Meghan's environment reportedly changed, with new connections forming and older ones becoming less present in the story being told publicly. Trevor, according to these accounts, became less visible in that evolving narrative, positioned more in the background as the public story moved forward. And that is where current discussions are now intensifying, because some insiders suggest that this absence from the narrative is exactly what is being challenged today. And now, the story takes another turn as attention shifts toward claims surrounding ambition, timing, and long-term planning in relationships and public image building. These claims remain part of circulating commentary and insider discussion, not confirmed facts, but they are being repeated widely enough to gain attention. There are allegations being discussed that Meghan Markle once described goals and ambitions in symbolic ways, including references to vision boards and future aspirations. Some sources go further and suggest that Prince Harry's presence in that vision was part of long-standing discussions in certain circles, though none of this is independently verified and remains highly contested in public discourse. What makes this portion of the narrative so intense is how it contrasts with Meghan's widely shared version of meeting Prince Harry, which she has described publicly as unexpected and organic. The tension between these two interpretations is what fuels much of the ongoing debate around this story. According to these claims, the idea is that positioning, timing, and access played a more strategic role than what is publicly acknowledged, though again, these remain allegations circulating in commentary spaces. And now, as the story continues to unfold in 2026, attention shifts back to the financial and lifestyle realities tied to royal life, where expectations and actual structures often differ significantly. The discussion being raised suggests that assumptions about wealth and lifestyle expectations may not have aligned with the institutional structure of royal finances, which are often complex, restricted, and not comparable to entertainment industry wealth. As These narratives continue building. They point toward business ventures, lifestyle branding, and public-facing projects as part of a broader attempt to maintain financial independence and public relevance in a rapidly shifting media landscape. And all of this now circles back into the central tension of the story. The silence that lasted over a decade is now reportedly breaking, and whatever comes next is expected to add even more pressure to an already highly charged public narrative that continues unfolding in real time. What's now being whispered behind closed doors is that Trevor Engelson isn't just speaking out randomly. He allegedly has documented receipts that map out exactly when and how certain decisions were made. And that detail alone is sending shockwaves through the narrative being discussed right now. This isn't being framed as vague memory or emotional storytelling, but as structured, time-stamped history that could reshape how key events have been understood for years. And as pressure builds outside, the reaction from Prince Harry inside the private sphere is being described in a very different tone from public expectations, and honestly far more human and exposed than most people realize. Harry's reaction behind closed doors is not being described as rage or retaliation, but something heavier and internal, deep embarrassment, the kind that sits in silence and replays in the mind without stopping. Sources say it's not loud emotion, but a constant mental weight that lingers day after day. Think about what that means in context. Harry didn't just relocate or shift roles. He reportedly stepped away from an entire life structure, family ties, royal duties, military identity, and the system he grew up in. That is not a simple transition. It is a full identity rebuild under global attention. Now, according to these discussions, that entire decision is being mentally re-examined as new claims surface, and that is where emotional strain is reportedly coming from. Sources close to the situation describe Harry in 2026 as emotionally exhausted rather than physically tired, not just drained from work, but worn down from years of defending a narrative he believed in, only to now see it questioned from multiple angles. He is reportedly spending long stretches away from shared spaces inside the Montecito residence, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet separation of routine and focus. Some say he is turning more toward individual projects, like Invictus Games efforts, and personal grounding work tied to his earlier identity. That shift is being interpreted less as public separation and more as emotional recalibration, like someone trying to steady themselves after years of constant narrative pressure. And the separation in daily life is no longer treated as rumor. It is being described as structured and visible in routine patterns. Public appearances are reportedly coordinated rather than shared experiences. Charity events are attended separately, and business schedules are handled individually. That change is why observers now say the power couple image is no longer being actively maintained in the same way. It has not collapsed publicly, but it has clearly changed form and priority. And while all of this unfolds, attention shifts again to King Charles and a moment in April 2026 that reportedly carried emotional weight for Harry. During an official visit to the United States, speculation was intense about whether reconciliation might finally happen between father and son. Many expected at least a private meeting or symbolic gesture. Harry reportedly sent a handwritten letter, rare for him, described as deeply personal and focused on rebuilding a strained relationship. But according to reports, the palace response was formal and firm, allowing no private meeting and keeping everything strictly official. That outcome is being described as a major emotional setback for Harry, who reportedly still believed some form of reconnection was possible over time. Sources say he genuinely thought distance had not fully closed the door, and that gradual reconciliation was still achievable. But when that expectation collapsed, the emotional impact reportedly hit harder than expected. And according to insiders, Harry attempted to process that disappointment within his personal relationship, seeking emotional understanding around the continued family separation. However, the response is described as more strategic than emotional, focused on external narratives rather than shared grief. Reports suggest Meghan linked the palace refusal to wider media pressure and ongoing rumors connected to Trevor Engelson. Harry reportedly pushed back on that framing, insisting his father's decision should not be tied to unrelated developments. That moment is being seen as important because it suggests limits are forming around how external narratives are being used in personal conflicts. And while that emotional strain builds, attention shifts to what is being described as the most disruptive element of all, the rumored memoir. What makes the Trevor Engelson situation so sensitive is the claim that he does not need to reconstruct events. He was allegedly there during the entire early timeline. This is why insiders describe it as primary source storytelling rather than second-hand interpretation. And because the marriage ended before Meghan became a global royal figure, there reportedly was no modern NDA structure that would restrict disclosure of that period. That legal gap is now being discussed as a major vulnerability, removing one of the most common protections in high-profile separations. According to circulating claims, memoir discussions began gaining attention in late 2025, involving archive materials, early messages, and personal records from the Toronto and Los Angeles years. These include emails, photos, and correspondence said to provide context to the early relationship timeline. While none of this is confirmed and remains heavily disputed, the possibility alone intensifies public interest because it introduces a documented alternative perspective from someone directly involved. The most sensitive claims circulating online extend into deeply personal territory regarding family and medical history, but these remain unverified theories and part of online speculation rather than established fact. Still, their presence adds weight to the broader conversation because it shifts discussion beyond relationships into narrative structure and historical interpretation. Meanwhile, legal teams are reportedly monitoring developments, but without strong contractual protections in place, their ability to intervene is described as limited. On the public-facing side, the Sussex brand continues facing pressure of its own. American Riviera Orchard was launched as a major lifestyle venture meant to build a long-term commercial identity. But early rollout reactions reportedly raised confusion around branding, pricing, and direction. This led to a rebrand into As Ever, presented as a refreshed direction after early challenges. Critics, however, saw it as a reset following setbacks rather than a clean creative evolution. Then came the logo controversy, with comparisons drawn between the brand design and a historic municipal emblem in Spain. Local officials reportedly raised concerns, and legal reviews followed, increasing global attention on the situation. What stands out in this narrative is not only the setbacks, but how they are interpreted internally versus externally. According to this framing, challenges are often attributed to external interference rather than internal missteps, but observers are increasingly questioning that explanation, pointing instead to practical factors like market demand, pricing strategy, and brand clarity. That tension between interpretation and reality is becoming more visible in public discussion. At the same time, another quieter shift is being noted: the gradual fading of early Hollywood support. Where there was once strong public alignment from major celebrity figures, recent years show far less visible engagement or promotion. That silence is interpreted in different ways, but it clearly reflects a change in public positioning compared to earlier years. And as all of this continues unfolding, legal pressure, brand uncertainty, personal strain, and shifting alliances, the entire situation is becoming more complex and unpredictable, with no clear resolution in sight. As the story continues evolving in real time, everything around this situation is tightening fast as reports suggest Trevor Engelson is no longer just being discussed as a background figure, but as someone allegedly connected to documented timelines and records that could reshape how certain early events are understood. This isn't being treated like casual recollection anymore. but like structured history from a period before. Fame fully took over the narrative. At the same time, inside Harry's private world, the emotional reaction being described is far from loud or reactive. It's heavy, internal, and deeply uncomfortable in a way that doesn't show up in public appearances at all. Harry's current state is being described as embarrassment, mixed with emotional exhaustion. Not dramatic outbursts, but quiet pressure, building over time as new claims and interpretations keep resurfacing in the public space. It's the kind of feeling that doesn't leave easily because it's tied to life-altering decisions made years ago under very different beliefs and expectations. He reportedly isn't responding with confrontation or public defense, but instead with withdrawal into more controlled routines and spaces. Sources describe him spending more time focused on individual projects like Invictus-related work and personal identity rebuilding rather than shared public appearances. That shift is being seen as subtle but noticeable, less about separation as a headline and more about separation in daily structure and emotional distance forming over time. Public appearances are now being described as coordinated rather than naturally shared, with events attended separately and schedules managed independently in ways that reflect a more professional dynamic than a unified public couple image. Observers say the royal meets Hollywood image hasn't collapsed publicly, but it has clearly changed shape and tone in how it is presented to the outside world. Meanwhile, attention turns again to King Charles and the April 2026 US visit that carried emotional weight behind the scenes for Harry in ways not fully visible to the public. There was intense speculation about a possible reconciliation moment, with expectations building around whether father and son would finally meet privately during the visit. Harry reportedly sent a handwritten letter ahead of time, described as personal, emotional, and focused on rebuilding some form of connection after years of distance. But according to reports, the palace response was formal and structured strictly around official duties, with no private meeting approved and no family reconciliation scheduled during the visit. That outcome is being described as a major emotional setback for Harry, especially because insiders say he still held on to hope that gradual reconnection was possible despite everything that had happened. He reportedly believed time and distance would eventually soften tensions enough for at least partial rebuilding of family ties. Instead, the response reinforced the opposite direction: clear boundaries, official framing, and no deviation from protocol. And in private, Harry is said to have expressed disappointment within his personal relationship space, seeking emotional alignment around the ongoing family separation. However, sources claim the response he received focused more on external explanations tied to media narratives and broader controversies rather than shared emotional processing. Some interpretations allegedly link this moment back to ongoing public pressure, including speculation around Trevor Engelson's rumored memoir discussions and wider media narratives. Harry reportedly pushed back against that framing, insisting the situation with his father should not be tied to unrelated external developments. That moment is being highlighted as significant because it suggests growing limits on how much external narrative blending he is willing to accept in personal family matters. At the same time, the focus shifts heavily toward the rumored Trevor Engelson memoir, which is being described in discussions as the most potentially disruptive element in the entire situation. What makes it so widely discussed is the claim that Trevor would not be reconstructing events from speculation, but allegedly from direct lived experience during the early timeline being referenced. This is why commentary frames it as a primary perspective situation rather than secondary reporting. It's being described as someone who was actually there during those formative years. Circulating claims suggest that because the marriage ended before global royal exposure, there may not have been the same modern restrictive agreements that typically exist in high-profile separations. That legal gap is being discussed as a key reason why speculation around a memoir has gained so much attention in 2026. Reports of publishing discussions began circulating in late 2025, with references to archived materials, early communications, and personal records tied to the Toronto and Los Angeles period. These alleged materials include emails, photos, and correspondence said to provide additional context to early relationship dynamics. While none of this is confirmed publicly and remains heavily debated, the possibility alone is enough to intensify public curiosity and narrative tension. At the same time, more sensitive claims circulating online remain unverified and are widely considered speculative commentary rather than established fact. But they still contribute to the broader discussion environment. Legal teams are reportedly watching developments closely, but without strong contractual restrictions like NDAs, the ability to fully control publication outcomes is being described as limited. Meanwhile, the public-facing Sussex brand continues facing its own set of challenges. American Riviera Orchard was initially positioned as a major lifestyle venture meant to establish long-term commercial identity. However, early rollout reactions reportedly fell short of expectations, with confusion around product direction, pricing perception, and brand identity clarity. This led to a rebrand into As Ever, described as a refreshed restart, meant to stabilize direction and messaging. But critics interpreted it as a reset following early setbacks, rather than a purely creative evolution. Then came the logo controversy, where comparisons were drawn between the brand design and a historic municipal emblem in Spain. Local officials reportedly raised concerns publicly, and the situation gained international attention, adding pressure to an already unstable rollout. What stands out in commentary is not just the setbacks themselves, but how they are interpreted internally versus externally. According to this narrative, every challenge is being framed as external interference rather than internal strategy issues. But observers are increasingly questioning whether business-related explanations like market fit, branding clarity, and pricing strategy might also play a major role. That tension between interpretation and reality is becoming more visible as discussions evolve. At the same time, the decline of visible Hollywood support is also being noted. Early years in California featured strong public backing from major celebrities and influential figures across entertainment and media. But in 2026, that visible support has significantly faded, with far fewer public endorsements or promotional engagement tied to new projects. That silence is being interpreted in multiple ways, but it clearly marks a shift in public alignment compared to earlier years. As all these layers continue unfolding, legal pressure, brand instability, personal strain, and shifting alliances, the overall situation remains unresolved and increasingly complex. Every new development adds another layer, and the story continues evolving in real time, with no clear endpoint in sight. If you followed this from the start, you already see how fast things are moving. Drop a comment below and share what you think happens next. Does Trevor's voice actually shift the public conversation or not? And if the memoir really drops, what do you think Harry does next in all of this? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story isn't slowing down anytime soon. And the next chapter could land faster than anyone expects.